Hello, and welcome to part 3 of our tutorial series for Vray. And here I'm going to kind of continue on with the project. So last time we kind of finished up with basic textures and basic materials. And we did one advanced material here for the ground. Again, you don't really need to do that kind of material if you don't want to. It was just for me to show you how to make a composite, a little bit more advanced material, right? So now we're going to kind of continue, but before I do that, I kind of want to remember what kind of render I'm getting from this. So I'll just run the render. Come on. There we go. So this is what we are getting currently. It's not great, ain't gonna lie, but we are going to make it great. So first thing that I kind of want to address is the sharpness of the shadows that we get from the sun. I don't really like that I don't really like when the shadows are that sharp. Feels a little bit weird. So what I'm going to do is I'll go to the Vray asset editor. I'll go to the lights and I'll find my Rhino document sun, this guy right here. I'll expand it. And here I have all of the settings for the Rhino document sun. So if I take a look here, there's like this custom orientation widget here that we could work with, but I prefer to just use the sun command and work with it that way. So this is not that interesting for me. The more interesting thing is color and intensity, right? So here I can change the color of the sun. I wouldn't suggest you do that. That would probably make it look weird. It's much better later on to just do color alterations. I'll show you how to do them later. And also intensity, don't change the intensity, please. But the size multiplier though, we can change that. So I think you will have the size multiplier set to 1 by default. And I have my defaults overwritten so that it automatically changes it to 5. And I feel like 5, well, it increases the size of the sun. And in doing so, it softens the shadows a little bit. So if you haven't done that, I would suggest you do that. Just helps quite a bit with the realism of things. Or maybe, yeah, it's not realistic, but it looks better. let's just call it that. Sky. So this controls the environment, the sky of our scene. And here, the only thing that you could change in the sky model, I believe by default it's Horsek et al. Sky model. You could use improved sky if you have the newest version of Vray, but doesn't really change that much. The Horsek et al. Is good, so you can just use between this or this, doesn't matter. Everything else, I really don't want to mess around with it too much because it you can really screw up the scene when you change things without really knowing what they do. So for now, just improved version and size multiplier of 5 should do the trick. Okay, so let me minimize that. So we have our scene, and I already forgot how it looks like. Yeah, it looks like crap. Let's add some stuff around our building, right? So trees and whatnot. So to do that, we need to get some trees. And there's a bunch of different websites that you can find tree models in. The one that free tree models in, if you just Google free tree models, you'll be able to find them. But the one that I kind of use is called CGTrader. This guy right here. I think I already showed you this before, maybe in the last tutorial, where you can find quite a few plants. So the way you find them is if you go to 3D models and you find plant, here you'll see all of the different planned 3D models. So not all of them you'll be able to download for free. Well, most of them are kind of quite expensive. But here there's a tick mark which you can tick, which says free. And then you can, straight up get the free 3D models of trees and plants and whatnot. So let's find a tree. Oh, this is nice. Why does it? Curly leaf tree. This is nice, but maybe later. For now, I just want a very simple one. This looks simple. So I'm looking for background trees. Chestnut, sure. I'll click on this. Free download. Yes, please. And then we wait 20 seconds. Yeah. That's the that's the price that you have to pay. Looking at the cool advertisement while you wait for the download to start. So come on. I have a tutorial here to run. Please go. There we go. So it loads up this whole whoa. Okay. This is something that I need to talk about. When it loads up, always check how many megabytes the trees, the tree 3D models are. And these are really heavy 3D models. So let's find a different one, okay? Because I don't want like a 1 gigabyte tree model. So let me go back. We need to wait again. I'm sorry, but we will need to go back, and maybe this one. There's like 50 pages of this stuff, so you'll definitely be able to find some nice models amongst these. This one looks fine. It's a little bit. Ooh. This one can be used in the background. Ooh, spruce trees. Well, fir trees. We could use these as well. Okay, sorry for... Yeah, and it's 12 megabytes. Sure, free download. So anything that's below 50 megabytes, I would say is fine for a tree model. Everything that is kind of in between 50 and 150 or 50 and 200 megabytes is okay if you only have like one tree and it's like the primary focus on your scene. Yeah. So FBX format, that's perfect for us. So Rhino uses FBX, 3ds, OBJ, DXF formats, right? So if you see any of those, just download it. Okay, show folder. I'll just copy this desktop. Well, not desktop. Let's just paste it here. I'll create a new folder here. Apparently it doesn't show up. Let me refresh. There we go. Tree imports, something like that. Get in here, please. Why are you now lagging? There we go. Control V. My Windows is not happy about something. I don't know about what. Yeah, but there we go. So these are our trees, and there are like 3 versions of it as well, it seems. So that's good. That's good to know. And also we get 3 different textures here. So 3 models and 3 textures. Let's see what kind of textures we have. Let me just make it extra large icons. Okay. So some bark texture, some opacity map. Oh, I will be able to show you what opacity map does, and some tree leaves texture here. That's great. So let's, the way you import a 3D model, I've already showed you, but you basically drag and drop, right? Drag and drop, not open, but rather import file, hit OK. Yeah, whatever, hit OK again. Yeah, whatever. We will scale it down to any size we want. So now it's imported, and when it imports, it immediately selects the mesh, right? So you don't need to do it. So it's easy for you to just type in ZS, enter to zoom selected, and kind of have that tree, like zoom into that tree. Okay, so this is what we have, and then this looks like a pretty decent tree. Ain't gonna lie. So we can work with this, I think. Let me create a new layer. I'll just call it trees back. Trees in the background, right? And I'll just select this guy and place change object layer, place it in that particular layer. So now we have this tree, right? If I were to, actually let me select it, isolate it, and render it. Right? If I render it, it renders out nicely and even has a nice little texture attached to it. But I believe in some cases it won't. So my thoughts are, yeah, and the texture will not show up here, right? So my thoughts are, let's rebuild the texture, right, from scratch, so that you know what we need to, what needs to be done. And it's going to be, in this case, it's going to be a pretty simple procedure because we have the trunk, right, and we have the needles right here. So those are two different meshes that will have two different materials, so to say. So let me just create a generic material and call it needles, and create one more generic material and call it trunk. And actually, that's naming convention is bad. It's going to be hard for me to find it. So I will just call it, come on, rename T1-needles and T1-trunk. That will just help me find it later down the line. So for needles, I'm thinking of just having, the texture is just straight up going to be this texture for the needles, like that. That's easy. And opacity map, right? So we need to talk about this. Refraction and opacity. I already talked about it in the previous tutorial, so check that one out. But if you don't remember, but basically refraction bends light. So it's a transparent material. Refraction dictates transparency of a material, but also it bends light. Opacity dictates transparency of the material, but it doesn't bend light. So it just kind of is very good to cut out some stuff. So what we see here is a texture, opacity texture, that has white area where the needles are and black area where the needles are not. So what this does in a sense, well, actually, let's do this. I'll select this whole thing and I'll apply the T1 needles to it. And I even messed up the materials. Wait. T1 needles, apply that, pops up here. And you can see that this is right now a bunch of rectangles, right? Because there's no opacity map. It doesn't understand that it needs to cut away some parts. So when I add an opacity map, everything that is black in that texture will be cut away, will not show up. So I will just drag it in to the opacity map like that. And now we're back to normal. We're back to the normal behavior. Also, the needles are usually quite reflective. So I'll add reflection and I'll add glossiness to them. And we're kind of good to go, right? So this has been done. This is finished. For the trunk, there's not much to it, right? There's just this texture here, and I will add a bump map as well. So since we don't have a bump map, I'll just reuse the same texture, paste as copy, and give it amount of, I don't know, like 2 centimeters, like 20 millimeters, something like that. And I will just apply it to selection. Render it out just to see if it works or not. Seems to be a pretty decent 3D model, a pretty decent tree. So I'll just stop it and call it a day, right, with this particular model. So now there is a problem. If I were, let's say I need 500 of these trees, right? If I were to just keep copying them, copy, 500 times, my scene would become insanely large, right? It would become a problem. So instead, what we're going to do is what's called a Vray Proxy. So what Vray Proxy does, it basically takes this geometry, it saves it into kind of like a separate file almost, and then as it works with that geometry like, what's a good example? Like InDesign works with your drawings, right? It does, Rhino will not have that geometry inside of it, but rather it will reference in, pick that geometry from an external file every time it needs it. So your file becomes light, but the setup process to render will become a little bit heavier, but it's a very good trade-off in my opinion. So I will just select these two meshes and I will click on export as Vray mesh, this guy right here, export as VR mesh, like that. And here it's going to ask me a bunch of questions. So file path, I will just choose a file path. And I'll just say tree imports here, you know, where I have the tree, and I'll just call it T1. That's my tree 1. Click save. So now I have a path where it needs to be exported. And faces in preview is basically how is it going to be shown once it's exported. And for faces in preview, I will use something like, let's go for 5,000 faces. So 5,000 times 500, that's still a lot. Let's do 1,000 faces instead. Something like that, right? Everything else is fine. Replace object with proxy, yes, we want to do that. So I'll hit export, kind of does its magic, and bam, my tree becomes like this. Starts looking super weird, right? But that's fine. This is what we want. If I were to render it, it still renders like a tree, right? So now, if I were to go to Vray Asset Editor and I go to Objects, I can see T1 being located here, and it has these two materials set up as its as materials that particular Vray proxy uses. And what I can do is, instead of proxy preview, I'm thinking of just using bounding box to preview it. So I'll be looking at it as if it's a bounding box. I think that's a good way of looking at proxies. So now, let me type in show. Select this bad boy here. How tall is it? Looks really tall. Wait, distance from here to here, 20 meters. Yeah, that's tall. Let's make it a little bit smaller. I'll just scale it to this point, 0.8, something like that. That's a little bit more reasonable, right? So that would be 16 meters. It's still a pretty tall tree, but I think that's gonna be fine. And now I'm gonna make a few copies of it. Just a second. Just a second. Let me just bring it here, and it's going to be located around the outer portions of the scene. So somewhere kind of here, right? It's going to be located here, and I'll just kind of keep making copies of it. So I'll just copy, like 2 of them. Let's say one of them is rotated like so, the other one is rotated like so. You always want to rotate them, and you also always want to kind of scale them to different proportions, right? To have different look to them, to add a different look to them. Don't scale them too much though. They will start looking weird. So we have 3 of them like so, and then I'll just select these 3. Make three more copies from them, maybe rotate them, auto-saving. Wait, maybe make a rotation like so. So now I have a group. Now I'll take this group, make a copy of it here. Perhaps just these guys, rotate them like so. So I'm basically just populating the scene with trees, and I will be placing them in the correct heights later. For now, I'm just kind of wanting to get a feel for them, right? Something like this. Copy there. Maybe turn it like that. Place them there. So something like this. Let's just render it out to see how it looks like, right? Just to get the overall sense of how this looks. There we go. You know, a bunch of trees. Well, what do you expect? So I'm going to kind of do this for a while, probably a few minutes, and I'll just kind of go around the whole perimeter and populate the trees. Once I'm done, I will continue the video. So just a second. Okay, so this is what we have so far. It's just me playing around. I have 4 different kinds of trees, and I just kind of scatter them around. And also I have camera turned on because I kind of wanted to see the positioning of it. So let me turn off the camera height so that it's not here. And just to show you what I have so far is, oh yeah, I need to turn on the walls and the furniture as well. So this is what we kind of, there we go. This is what we have so far. It's kind of a, you know, overall surrounding scene with trees and whatnot. So this is view number 2. This is view number 1. And this is view number 3. So you can see that adding detail really brings out the realism of the scene. Even still, you know, we still have really crappy ground, but and the model is not that, well, not the model, but the textures on the model are not that great. But the trees really make a huge impact, right? Because suddenly we have a lot of detailing here. So I done this off camera, so to say, just to save recording time, and so that you don't need to see me kind of moving trees around. But just looking at the time, it took me a little bit more than half an hour to kind of import the trees, you know, create the VR meshes from them, and work around placing them. So it's not a long procedure. I'm going to kind of continue doing so because there's one thing that I want to show. Once you have these VR meshes done, Vray proxies, they are exported into separate files, right? And those separate files can be reused in other scenes. And I'll show you how to do that. So back in the day, my wife did this very good architecture company. Last year, my wife did this project. Where is it? This guy right here. She did this project where she kind of used a lot of greenery and so on. And I kind of just stole a bunch of her a bunch of her 3D models, right, to use on this particular project. But those 3D models are in the form of, where are they? There they are. VR mesh. So they are VR mesh models, meaning that they are already proxies, right? If I import them, they will be imported as proxies. So I'll show you how to do that, right? And if you finish up this project and you want to work on another project, you will be able to import your proxies from this project this way as well, right? So if I go to here where I see import, well, there are like two options here, export or import, right? If I expand this. So if I choose to import a VR mesh, then here I can find, let's go for green bush, sure. Green bush seems to be fine. Let's go for this. I'll select this and hit on open. And you basically just import it that way. It's going to ask you to give it a point where you want it placed. So I'll pick this point, and it's not going to be placed perfectly. That's because we suck at this. So we kind of didn't place it in a correct. So basically, before exporting a Vray proxy, this guy right here was placed off away from the 0, 0 coordinates of the world. So it's going to be kind of placed a little bit away from the 0, 0 away from the point which you kind of click on. But if you type in ZS, you'll be able to zoom into it and see it. So this is the bush, and let me isolate it and click on render, just to show you how it looks like when it's imported, right? So it's definitely a higher resolution mesh, right, from what we have. But the problem with it is that it doesn't have any materials, right? Well, yes, that is definitely an issue, and that issue can be solved by giving it materials. So you can't just take a material and slap it on top of a Vray proxy. Instead, what you need to do is you go to the geometry tab, you find the green bush, you know, this proxy that we have just imported. We expand the right-hand side menu, and here we see two materials, right? One is blue, one is red. When I render this, I can see that the leaves are blue, and then there are these pink branches in between the leaves. So, okay, so I know which material is which. Then I will go in here and create two materials. So material generic, and the naming convention that I'll use is B01 or B1 trunk, and then materials generic B1 leaf. The reason why I write B instead of T, because this is a bush, not a tree, right? So that's at least my naming convention that I use. And then here in the textures, I'll find the textures that were used for it. And my guess is that it's going to be this guy right here, right? So I want it to be a pretty dark bush, so I'll use the the darker texture here. And B1 leaf, I'll just straight up copy it in here, right? So that's my leaf texture. Let's just see. Doesn't seem like there is an opacity map here. So what I'm going to do is I'll just go to Vray objects, go to green bush, and for the, I believe it was the blue, I'll apply the B1 leaf material to the blue channel and click the render button. Wait. And now I can see that it's being rendered out, right? Let me zoom pretty damn close to it. And here I can see that it's actually being rendered out in a clean way. So I'm happy. We keep it. We're happy with this. So then the same thing for the trunk, right? B1 trunk. Let's find a correct material for it. Okay, I could use this, right? Let me reuse for B1 trunk. I will not use that, so I'll just delete it. Instead, I will be using tree trunk material for it. It's super small, we won't see it anyway, so might as well reuse existing materials. So green bush, the trunk is going to use one of the tree trunk materials, T1 trunk. That seems okay. So we're kind of okay with how it is, and let me hit that render button. But there is one issue with it, and that issue is it doesn't really react to light that well. Well, it does kind of, you know, it produces a shadow, and it does work in that way. But other than that, leaves usually have that glowy effect, that really beautiful glowy effect. Pines or pine needles don't have that, but leaves do, right? That kind of inner glow effect when light hits them. and I really enjoy that effect, and I'll show you how to do it, right? So the way you create that effect is you need to understand that light filters through the material, and as it's filtering through the material, it changes color, and it also forces the material to glow, right? So there are two things about it. First, light is filtering through the material. It doesn't just bounce off, but it's filtering. So backside of the leaf is never black, right? The other thing is the glow, right? What kind of color does the light get? Does it get a little bit more, a little warmer, a little colder, right? Well, here I have only the diffuse, like the regular diffuse material, which is just green, right? B1 leaf, and it's okay for what it is, but it will never be, it will never have that quality of filtering light. So for that, we need a different kind of material, and I'll create a new material, and I'll choose two-sided. So that's the two-sided type, where you have front side, back side, and yeah, you have the front side material, you have the back side material, and then as light is going through it, it will enter through the front side, it will exit through the back side, and it will change its properties. So if I create that material, and I'll call this B1 master, right? Or we can do B1 leaf master. That's better. So I have this material, and it's going to ask me for two other materials. What's the front and what's the back? So actually, I only have one material here because I don't have a back one. So what I'm going to do with it, I'm just going to create a duplicate. So I'll right click on this B1 leaf material and create a duplicate. And I'll call this B1 leaf back, while the original one is going to be called B1 leaf front, right? So usually in trees, you have front side being colder color, back side being warmer color. You could, in Photoshop, just kind of create another texture, or not another texture, but change the colors of the texture and save it as another file and import it here into B1 leaf back material as it's diffuse. But I think it's much faster to just, when you have this texture here, the leaf diffuse texture, you right click on the texture slot, you choose to wrap it in some sort of function, right? Wrap in, and you choose color correction. Color correction. So now what happens is, imagine this kind of Russian nesting doll situation where you have the main material as the large doll, and you open it up, and inside of it lives this color correction, a smaller doll, and you open up that smaller doll, and inside of it lives this texture right here, right? This leaf texture. So if you change the color correction parameters here, you're basically changing the way this texture is going to be shown in the final material. So what I can do is I just can kind of shift the hue values a little bit. Well, they don't shift that well. Actually, that's pretty good. So I'll just shift the hue values a little bit to make it just slightly warmer. I think -15 will do the trick. Go up, and this is how it looks like right now. So I can kind of switch between the two, the front material. It looks like that. And back material like that. Again, front, back, front, oops, front, back, front, back, right? So it's a very subtle shift, but it is everything in nature is subtle, right? You need to do subtle things to mimic nature. So when we go to leaf master material here, for front material, I'll just choose B1 leaf front, and for back material, B1 leaf back. And that's it. You can already see a little bit of translucency going on here. I could even increase the translucency a little bit more to kind of get that effect, but I won't. I will kind of keep it at the medium. So translucency is it's quite a similar thing to transparency in that regard. but it doesn't show anything. It just lets light through. It doesn't let the image through, if that makes any sense whatsoever. What's a good example? Rice paper. Rice paper is translucent, but not transparent. Okay? Leaf is translucent. It lets light through, but it's not transparent. So have that kind of an understanding of what translucency is. Okay, so now we have leaf master. I'll go into my objects, Vray objects, green bush, and here, instead of B1 leaf front, I'll change this to B1 leaf master and hit that sweet render button again. Now we'll take a look if there is any difference whatsoever. Come on. Not really, huh? Or maybe. Or maybe. Yeah, good. There's gonna be difference. So we just need to wait a little bit. And it is super high contrast there in the back, but already here, you can start seeing this kind of a little bit, it's like 3 pixels, so I can't really show you, but this is the moment where I go, trust me, it works. There is a little bit of this translucency going on, and these kind of leaves, they start glowing just a tiny bit. From the light. The more you, let's go here, leaf master, increase the translucency. The more you increase the translucency, the more of this effect you will get. It's a really nice, subtle thing that really goes a long way in creating an image that you can really sell as real, or at least stylized real. So let me create a new layer, call it bush 1. Bush 1. And for now, I'll just place it somewhere here. And I will do this for 2 more bushes, or 1 more bush maybe, we'll see. And then we'll continue. So just to reiterate, we import, this time orange bush, open. We place it. We zoom select it. Okay, unable to zoom, so we find it. Where the hell it is? There it is. Okay, so zoom selected apparently didn't work, huh? So you will need to find it in your scene, but it shouldn't be that big of a problem. We zoom into it. We render it. We wait. So this is how it looks like, pretty close to the previous one. We will apply, so for the purple, we will apply the let's say, 3rd tree trunk material. And for this, I will apply leaf master material, right? And that's it. Right? We have our bush. I don't want to kind of create more materials here, or maybe I should. Let's create a little bit of a different skew for this particular material. So I'll stop this. Also, it's called orange bush. Might as well make it orange. So I'll stop the rendering, and I'll just make a duplicate of leaf master, make a duplicate here, and make a duplicate here. So I have now duplicates of B1, all of the B1 materials, and I'll rename them to B2, leaf back, B2, leaf front, and B, come on, you can do it, B2, leaf master. Okay, so now my B2 leaf master actually uses B2 leaf front and B2 leaf back. And the front one, I will indeed wrap it in color correction, and I'll make it more orange, right? Well, that's not orange. That is a little bit closer. That's fine. And it's a little bit too dark. So I want to add up a bit of brightness, like 0.1. Whoa, 0.01. 0.1, 0.01. Or 1.01. No, God damn it. 0.01. There we go. Just slightly brighter, maybe a bit more. Contrast, maybe 1.01. Yeah, something like that. We'll do the trick. And then for leaf back for this, I will choose hue of -30 maybe, or more. We can go to town on this. Let's make it red. Red, but a little bit less saturated, so something like this. And brightness, what did I use? 0.03? 1.02 for contrast. 1.05 for contrast. Something like this. So this is how the backside looks like. And the overall view is like this. So it's not orange, I know. Sue me. It's fine. Looks fine. I think it's gonna look fine. We'll see. Orange bush. Instead of B1 leaf master, we change B2 leaf master. We hit that sweet render button. Look at how it looks. Okay, it's this kind of withered brownish color tree. Can we make it a little bit brighter here? It's 13. Whoa, not 1, 13. I'm just kind of adding a little bit of brightness just to get a better understanding of what's going on. Why is this so dark? Are you dark as well? You're kind of dark. Those leaves are a little bit too dark for my taste. I want to make them brighter. So let me just increase the brightness of 0.1. No, 0.05. 1.05. And this is fine. This is the, super dark. 1.1. Ah, okay, 1.05, and here 0.07. 0.6. Yeah, that looks fine. Okay, hit that render button again, and let's see how these look like. You don't really react that well, huh? What if I'm now going to mess around a bit with this? Ah, okay, so when translucency is going full ham, they don't really, it doesn't really work. So it's better to have translucency somewhere in the middle. And then the color is going to be a little bit more precise. The more you know, the more you know. Okay, stop the render. Change this back to 14. And now we kind of place the trees, not the trees, the bushes, right? So the way I like to do this is I just go to, I have one top view for me set up. I have the perspective view where I change this to, let's say, exterior 1. I show all of the objects, and I will not be looking at the trees right now, at least trees in the back. I will not be looking at those. I'll just be looking at the ones that are nearest to us. Change object layer. I just changed the layer to bush 1, and now we kind of start putting a composition together, right? So those two bushes. So how do we do that? Well, let's hit that render button just to see. Oh yeah, this is very good. I messed up and now I have this as my active view. So it's going to render out the top view of my scene, right? So we don't do that. No, no, no. Instead, we do this. I think I clicked the wrong button. Close that. Stop, stop, stop the render. Stop. Render. Okay, so now this is my active view, meaning that this view is going to be rendered out. Quite important to to do that. But which means that once it started rendering out, before until I stop it, I can mess around with other views and it's not going to react, right? So I can just kind of whittle around here and this is not going to react. So let's start placing these bushes around, right? And for that, I kind of want to expand this a little bit more. Yeah, this is like okay size. Let's make this smaller here. And now let's see what kind of composition we can get. So this composition is okay, 1/3, kind of 1/3, then 1/3 is here. So it's kind of following that rule of thirds in terms of balance in the scene. So I'm just going to take my green bush here and I'll just place it. Actually, let me go to exterior 1 and type in camera, show the camera, so that I can see how wide the camera is and where exactly I can place these bushes. So I'll start from the area that's kind of close to the camera, and we'll begin moving back and copying back the bushes as I see fit. So for instance, that one is okay. It could be a little bit closer to the camera, a little bit to the left or to the right, maybe like that. Maybe it's a little bit bigger, 1.5, something like that. Yeah, that looks okay. So I'm hiding how the tree trunks are connecting with the ground, if that makes any sense. That's how it looks like right now. And this is a super laggy for me because I'm also recording. So just bear with me. I'm just going to show you, this view and just how I assemble all of these things, and I'll pause it again and I'll add the bushes to all of the views and maybe some rocks and whatnot and, stuff. I'll just add stuff to the surrounding environment. But basically this, right? So we have this bush here, and I think that looks fine. We have this bush here, and I think that bush could go up until here and kind of work in that corner, maybe closer, and maybe just slightly higher up, something like that. Okay, so that looks okay. Now I'm going to start making copies of these. So this guy right here can also frame the view a bit. Well, that's a little bit too much. I need to remember that I scaled it. So it's going to be scaled down by 0.75. Like that. Maybe somewhere here. I'm constantly looking at here at this line and also at the render just to see if I'm messing it up or not. The render stopped updating. No, it doesn't. It's fine. It is doing its thing. It looks fine. Right now, what I see here is that this could indeed move a little bit to the left in our view. Of course, auto-saving, god damn it. During the most important, okay. Move it a little bit to the side here. Are you gonna be fine? Yeah, I think that kind of composition is gonna look okay. Then also this, I'll just rotate it 180 degrees so that it doesn't look like it's a duplicate. It's very important to keep rotating and scaling things so that they don't look like duplicates. Remember that? This one can be right in the front, I think. Yeah, just a little thing right here, floating, apparently. Let's move it down. I think this is the ground plane. Yeah, stay there. So it's in front, but I kind of want a little bit of space, so I'm going to move it back a bit. Now we do get that bit of space here. But now we have a problem, which is green, green, brown, brown, right? So I need to dilute it, and also don't forget to scale it down, to rotate it and kind of scale it. So dilution, let me just make a copy of this and probably place it somewhere here. So notice how I'm only placing stuff where I will need it, where I will be looking at it. Very important. Not to kind of overdo things in terms of how much stuff you have in the scene. So now we have green, brown, green again. So my thoughts are maybe one more little doodad here, small one, you know, just there, just doing its thing. Maybe it can be a little bit more squished, like so. Wait for it to kind of catch up. Just resting in the shadow of this tree. I think that's gonna be fine. That's gonna look nice. So we have all of this going on. And then I'm just going to take a few more. So we have green, green, brown, brown. So let me take one green, one brown. I copy it somewhere here, somewhere much closer to the building itself. Let's place it there. Find a nice positioning for it. I think somewhere here will do the trick. Yep. And then maybe here. So my bad, maybe here. Not really. Doesn't look that great. Maybe we can do a cluster of like a pair of these, like that. So two of them just kind of living in harmony. So that's fine. Actually, I kind of want to do more clusters, so let me just bring that in and just push it all the way here to this little guy here. Rotate it around. Yeah, and I think that's fine. That this is enough bushes for here. I don't want to overdo it, right? To do too many things with it. The amount of bushes that we have here, I think, is okay. It's fine. So I'm gonna call it with this particular shot, and then I'm basically going to repeat this process for other shots, and I'll stop the video here, and I'll see you once I've done that. Okay, let's take a look at what I have so far. So yeah, I need to turn on a bunch of layers first. Come on. There we go. All of them? Yes, all of them are turned on. Let me show, just in case something is hidden. Nothing is hidden. That's great. We still see the camera, so let me type in camera, hide, turn that off, and just switch this to top view, just so that it's easier for you to see. So I've added some rocks, and basically these are two meshes, the same mesh copied 2 times, right? So there are 2 meshes almost. The key word there is almost in the same spot. One of them has rocks material on it, the other one has moss material on it. And in that way, moss is kind of going on top of the rock, just a little tip there, how to create rocks. And also notice that only a part of them is sticking out. Most of it is underground. Same thing here. Most of it is underground, only part is sticking out. Very important. Also, I've added flowers. I've added debris, like branches and whatnot. I've added kind of little bushes here. I didn't even do proxies for these because I don't have too many of them. And some flowers here as well. So let's take a look at how these things render out. Let me jump to the first view, because this is the one that on which we're working on. Hit that render button and just kind of investigate, see what we are dealing with. And it's getting heavy, for sure. But yeah, that's how it is. That's how things go. Things get heavy. Right now, my file is 437 megabytes, which is okay. Usually, my files never reach 1 gigabyte, but sometimes they do. Right. So this is the current view. This is how currently it looks like. And I still haven't shown you how to create a proper view because I don't think it's necessary at this stage. But this is how it looks like right now. I kind of enjoy it. I think we can do a little bit work with the light. Let's see, the exposure value. What if we do 13 rather than 14? Just to bring in a little bit more light. No, also keep in mind, the sky will be changed later on, right? So I'm not looking at the sky. Don't care about how it looks like right now. I'm looking at everything else. I have some flowers, flower petals here, a few bushes here and there, a little nice pine tree. Wait, is this the pine tree? Yes. But if this is the pine tree, then what is this? Spruce, right? Don't know English names for them, but basically a bunch of crap going around. And if I change this to exterior 2, this is how exterior 2 looks like right now. Some rocks, some debris, some stuff on the ground. So it breaks apart the ground a little bit more. Also reflections, reflections work well. Exterior 3, and the same thing, right? So I kind of like how this is turning out, to how this is looking. I think it looks definitely better than it did before. There are of course still many things to do. For instance, here I would need to solve this little part right here. These bushes don't look that good, but overall, this is becoming decent. This is becoming okay. Right. So where to from here? Well, first thing that I should note is when you have a bunch of stuff in your render, it makes the render better. Detail, 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 detail. It's all about detail. So here I'm adding bushes, trees, and whatnot because this house is in the nature. If you have a building in the city, you can still add detail. It doesn't need to be trees, right? It can be bikes and cars and trash bins and whatnot. Trash, pebbles, a bunch of these small things, they add up to make it more realistic. The ground texture is still pretty bad, but I think I don't want to go too deep into advanced rendering techniques and material creation techniques because that would require 2-3 more hours. And this is like a condensed version and also just an introduction to Vray, so I'm not going to be doing that. Instead, what we're going to be doing is playing around with the lights a little bit more. Let me jump into exterior 2, actually. This view right here, and render. run the render and just see what kind of lighting condition I can create here for not just the exterior, but also for the interior, for the inside. Let's wait a bit. Okay, so this is how it looks like right now, and it's fine, but I do want to light up the interior so that it shows better. So my thoughts are, let's stop the render. My thoughts are adding some spotlights, some downlights here so that the interior kind of shines. Let's switch to perspective view and make sure that we are looking at the correct correct place. And so this is the facade that we're looking at. And I'm just going to kind of create a new layer, call it lights. I'll just make that layer active, and I'll create probably just rectangular lights at first in here, just to flood the space with some light. So let me just use the top of the table like so to draw that rectangular light. You know, I just want it flat, and now I'll just kind of rotate it and position it so that it's as if the light is shining from here, from this surface right here. I'll just position it right like so, zoom selected, probably a little bit closer, further in, and I'll scale it down so that it's kind of a narrow light, like this, right? Probably somewhere here, maybe even closer to the facade, something like this, right? So I have one light here, and I'll copy it to the other side. And that's it. I have two lights, right? So this and this area will be lit by these two lights, and I still need more in on the ceiling in the top. So maybe what we could do, I'm just thinking right now, we could do LEDs here, but that would be a little bit weird. Or maybe not, maybe it wouldn't be weird. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll select the beams, and I'll select the lights, and I'll type in isolate so that nothing is getting in my way as I'll be copying the lights up, placing them near, placing the copy near the first beam. And it doesn't need to be super precise. I just need it to be kinda where I want it, like this. Scale it up. That should be good, should be fine. I'll just kind of start making copies. Actually, let's do it this way. Select that, copy from here to here, here. So a bunch of these light sources will start working for us in our scene. That, and that. Okay, so now I have my lights set up. Well, kinda. I still want a few more, of course, but I have like the floodlights set up. Do we want more? Maybe not right now. Sorry, I'm just thinking. Maybe not right now. Let's say this is enough, right? So I'll go to my Vray asset editor, lights, rectangle light, this guy right here, expand it, and I'll change the color of them, first of all, to be a little bit towards the orange side. So warm, warm light. Maybe even warmer, can be warmer, that's fine. And intensity, for now, let's just keep intensity at 100. I have no idea what kind of intensity I need. I'll go to the options and make them invisible so that they're not in your face so much and you don't see the actual rectangular lights. Everything else here is fine. Let me jump to exterior 2, hit that render button, and see how it looks like. The setup, oh my god. It's getting slow. Come on. In the bottom, I can see that it's loading in all of the textures. Right now, I have a lot of them, so it takes a while to load them in and to start rendering. And yeah, I do get some light here in my scene, but it's while the top ones are kind of okay, the bottom ones are super weak. And it makes sense because the top ones, I have much more in the top than in the bottom. So what I'm going to do is minimize this. Well, not minimize, but make this smaller. Place it somewhere here. Go to, let's see the top view. That's fine. Set view, perspective. This is going to be super laggy now for me. So bear with me while I'm trying to zoom in and catch the bottom two lights. Now it's crashing. I think I'm running out of RAM. Let's just see. Task manager. 81% of memory is being used, so it's still not at the point of crashing, but it's not great. Oh, and the CPU is just choking out like crazy. Okay, understood. Understood. So let's kind of push through this. Fine, I'll stop the render. I can't work with this. I'll stop the render, and now it's back to normal. I'll select these two lights. I'll go to properties, and I'll choose make unique, right? So it's going to make these two lights unique. And here I can see them, rectangle light 1 and rectangular light 2. I'll just call it, yeah, I'll keep them named this way. That's fine. And I'll increase their intensity by 2, so 200, or I can increase it here as well, 200. And actually I want it to be a little bit more orange. So I'll increase the color of them to be more saturated. So I have that going on. While I'm here, might as well kind of increase the size of these two. So move them here and scale them up a bit to make them a little bit wider. I think that's going to make a nicer flooding effect. And I'll just take this, make a copy of it. So scale it down so that it fits underneath the sink top, and scale it to be the size that I want. Something like that should do the trick. Okay, so I'm okay with this. This area right here is whatever. This is fine. Yeah, I think most of it is fine. While I'm at it, actually, let me just take one of these lights and just make a copy of it to the side here, right here. Scale it up and move it a little bit back. Something like this, maybe a little bit more, something like this. Scale it up even further. Auto saving. We wait. Okay. Now it's scaled up. I'm a bit more. That's good. That's fine. So I have some lights in the corridor as well. That's going to be for my other view. So I think this is going to be good enough. Let's see. Let's take a look and see if it's actually going to be good enough. Hit that render button. Let's investigate. So basically, you add accent lights either before you add detail or right after you add detail. I prefer to do it before. I prefer to do it after I add the detail, but it's up to you. It doesn't really matter when you add the accent lights. Okay, so now there is plenty of light there. The staircase is being kind of lit, and we have like the kitchen area that's being lit. Everything is kind of working in our favor. And we also have a very pronounced edge here that I will try to save or keep. Okay, so that is done. Let's switch back to exterior 1. And actually, yeah, I do need to add lights to exterior, to this part of the exterior as well. So I already have a few lights going on here because of the way that I copied them along the beams. But let me just scale them down so that they're not awkward. Like this. You, sir, get scaled down as well. And you. Actually, the correct way would be for me to select all 3 of these and scale them down kind of together, but whatever. And we still have like a few things here and there. So for instance, this thingy right here, I didn't even add textures to it. I need to add textures. So this is steel. This is going to be black. I want it to be black, so I'll just reuse the roof metal material. There we go. And for this, we have the spotlights, but I don't really want to kind of overexpose this, so I will not be turning them on. Instead, I will be turning on these. So these are like lantern lights, and what I'm going to do with them is I'm going to create a mesh light from them. So convert to mesh light, like that. Go to the lights, drop down, increase the... Right now I know that it needs to be like 200 for it to work. I'll kind of reuse the same color as well for these. So these are going to shine pretty bright light. Maybe I don't want it to be that bright. I'll turn it down to 100 just so that it's not too bright. So that is taken care of. This guy right here, I could just create a sphere light and then kind of work with it that way, but I'm not sure if we need to. Maybe this is turned off. Maybe there's no one here, but there's light that's turned on here. As you can see, the light fixtures are not modeled out in this 3D model, but that's fine. For what we're doing for our like a preliminary showcase, this is enough. Oops, messed it up a bit. Like so. We'll shine light there. Should be okay. Maybe it can shine light a little bit back towards the back of the room. So we'll have some sort of a central composition here with these 2 areas being dim without any lights. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at how this will work. Keep in mind that this is the facade at which receives light from the outside, which kind of is being lit by the sunlight. This is in the shade, the one that you see now on the screen, but the one that we are currently rendering is the one that is kind of receiving direct sunlight. So it might be, I might need to just disable the lights altogether in this facade just to make it work better. It's not bad. It's fine. Maybe I do want to. Let's just see what happens if I select that light. Come on, I'm trying to. Just give me. I can't select it. Let me just go in here. Which one are we rendering? I have no idea which one we're rendering. Well, we'll see. When I rotate this, yes, it starts rendering out the wrong direction. So it's actually this view right now that we can actually rotate around without messing up our interactive, super interactive renderer. But it's so slow. There we go, almost there. So the top is fine. The way the top works, I kind of like it. The bottom, though, I don't want a light there. I think a darker area here will do better. So I'll just select this and delete it. And now it's going to be light turned off. Now we have this kind of checker box type of a composition. Oh, you can't really. There we go. Checker box type of a composition. I think that's fine. That looks okay. So that is that. That is that in terms of lighting. And I think this is where we will kind of begin doing final touches on the exterior, and we will find a nice camera angle for the interior, or a few nice camera angles for the interior. And then in the next video, we'll investigate how we can render out the interiors as well, because you will need to, of course. So let me stop the render right now. And let's talk about finishing touches. So the first thing that I always like to do is in Vray settings, I like to expand the right-hand side. Make sure that interactive is turned off. So this is almost like the first time. Well, actually, wait, sorry, wait. We'll do this last. We'll do this last. So interactive is still turned on. We are still kind of in this interactive work mode. So what kind of finishing touches are we talking about? Well, under camera, under effects, there is this vignetting setting. So vignetting, I will choose to have one factor of 1 for vignetting. So vignetting is basically the corners of the render will be darker than the center of the render, right? So it kind of just draws focus to the center. I have quite a few views. Well, 2 out of 3 views are central composition. So that will work in our favor. So vignetting, I will turn this on. Besides this, I don't really need to change anything. Render output, we will change this last to kind of increase the size of our image, because right now the image is super small. But we will do this last. One thing is volumetric environment, fog, right? I really like adding fog to my renders to give the sense of depth in the render. But please don't add too much fog. It's ridiculous if you add too much of it, right? So if I turn on volumetric environment, and actually, how do I show this to you? Let me show you one trick, how to kind of find the correct balance for the fog. If we go to, well, first of all, we need to turn off the proxies, because those don't, well, do they matter? Maybe they do. So I will not be turning off the proxies, but what I will be doing is here, under material override, I will turn it on. What this thing does is, when it's on, it will override all of your materials to be gray, right? So it gets rid of all of the material information. So now with this turned on, if I press the render button, it's going to compile the geometry, yeah, but it's going to render out a grayscale version of our geometry, right? Without any materials whatsoever, which is great, I think, for finding that nice fog positioning, right? Because it's faster and so on. So now we have this kind of a grayscale render, or not grayscale, but render without any materials. And I will go into volumetric environment and I'll turn it on. So when I turn it on, it's going to become super funky and super weird. Don't worry about that. The next thing that we are going to change is from aerial perspective, we'll change this to environment fog. Immediately turns black. Well, if you're using meters, it might not, but in millimeters, it's definitely turning black. And the reason for that is the fog is super dense. If I kind of rotate around the view and I look at it, you can see that my whole geometry is like living in a soup of things, right? Of fog. So it's super dense. How do we change the density? It's this distance value right here. So right now the distance value is 1,000 millimeters. Well, in my case, my units are millimeters, so it is 1,000 millimeters. If you're dealing with meters, then it's going to be 1,000 meters, right? So know what kind of units you use. So distance multiplier is, or not multiplier, scalar distance is 1,000. So if I increase this to 10,000, you can see that the soup becomes a little bit more transparent. If I increase, so 10,000 is like 10 meters, right? If I increase this to 100,000, that's going to be 100 meters. This becomes foggy. You know, it's not a soup anymore. It's fog, right? So what this means is that 100,000 millimeters is the distance at which you will, let's call it this way. So it's a little bit more complicated than what I am going to tell you, but let's just say at 100,000 millimeters right now, the fog becomes a wall, right? It's not like that, but let's just say it is, right? It becomes like a wall, which you can't see through, right? So the higher the distance, the less of a fog effect you get. So let's jump back. Oh, also let's talk about height. So height basically is from at which height does the fog begin and then goes down, right? So if my height is, let's say, 50 meters, 50,000 millimeters, then the fog begins quite high up, right? And everything is in the fog. If my height is 0, then the fog, you know, is at the same height as my ground, and it's not really working. So my height needs to be something like usual. So usually a fog is, well, it really depends on what kind of fog, but it I'll just do like 5 meters, something like that, 5,000 millimeters for the fog. And I'll switch back to the exterior one shot, and I'll just investigate how much of a fog I get. And this is, for me, this is too intense, way too intense, because remember, this is without fog, right? And this is with fog. So this is too intense. So I'll double this distance value. Still too intense, I'll double it again to 440 or 400 meters. And this is starting to become okay. Maybe a little bit more, 500 meters. Yeah, so now this is something that I would consider okay for fog, you know, a little bit subtle, you know, not too much in your face. Then there's more stuff that you can change here. You can change the color of the fog. You know, if you want it red for some reason, I don't, so I'll have it white. Emission of the fog, so if you want the fog to glow, well, right now it's not going to show up, but let's just not, so it's black, right? It's not glowing. And then you have scatter GI. So this is a very heavy thing, to calculate. But basically what it does, if this is enabled, the fog will become a little bit lighter, because as sunlight is going through it, it's going to start bouncing around in the fog, and the fog will become a little bit lighter. So this is actually a bit more accurate if you have it turned on, but if the render times are obnoxious, then turn this off and you will save like half of the render time. Right? But I'll keep it on, why not? Just to compare, by the way, if your renders are taking too long and you don't really, you think that it's maybe your computer or something like that, the computer that I'm using right now, while I'm talking, let me just turn off the material override so that we can see how it's going to look like. And while it's doing that, I'll talk. So if you feel like your renders are taking way too long and your computer is, it seems slow, and you're about to blame your computer, what you can do is, in the video description, I have listed all of the stuff that I use for these YouTube videos and whatnot. And my computer is also listed there. So I think it's like an Amazon page or something like that. So you can check out what kind of computer I'm using and compare to yours, and then you'll kind of get an understanding, you know, if it's actually your computer that's super slow, or if it's or if there is maybe a problem somewhere between the screen and the chair. Just saying. So this is not rendering. Oh, it's hanging. Okay, cool. This is like me trying to say that most of the problems are from the user, but and then I just hang my computer. How do we do this? Let's not wait. So I'll stop the video and we'll pick up once this has stopped crashing. Okay, so just a second. Okay, so it crashed. So I'm not using any scatter GI for this particular scene. That's absolutely fine with me. And now I can kind of see the fog's effect on the materials, and I still think that it's too intense, too heavy. So I'm going to maybe not double it, but change this to 750 meters, something like that, and maybe push it a little bit down to like to be 4 meters high, something like this, just to get a little bit more contrast out of this area right here. Other than that, I think this is fine. I would spend more time on this area right here, but I honestly don't know how to make it better. Maybe some wines, maybe something like that. Some dirt would definitely help. Right now it's resting too cleanly on the surface, but I'll probably fix it with Photoshop later on, not with rendering. So Photoshop is going to be a big part of the process. Well, at least for me. So we have this done, and I like it. Now, volumetric environment, that's turned on. I will keep it on for the rest of these videos. Well, maybe for the interior, I'll turn it off, because who cares if there's fog in the interior or not. I'm just thinking if there's anything that I've missed. No, there's nothing. So we can start rendering. So to render this out properly, as a proper image, I will create, first of all, I will choose that it's not an interactive render anymore. It's a progressive render, right? So it means that it's going to go all the way, right, to the end result, not just kind of show you a good enough image so that you can make design decisions. right? So not interactive progressive. Then I change quality to probably like medium plus or high. Never go high plus, that is ridiculous. For this, I will use probably medium plus quality. Apologies. And for render output, this is where we choose what kind of size of an image we want. And I will probably go for 1080 resolution. So usually it's 1920 by 1080, but mine is a little bit wider, so it's 1998 by 1080. I think that's gonna do the job. Or maybe we can do a little bit larger image. Now let's do 1080, that's fine. And that's good enough for this kind of tutorial. So 1080p resolution. All right, so that is done. Then let me just double check if there's anything else that I want to switch around. Not really. Oh, right. The thing that I wanted to show. So right before you start your final render, you go to here on the right hand side, you go to global illumination and you click on these three things like this icon, which has like the switch to advanced settings icon. That's how I'm gonna call it. You click on it, and now you have the possibility to turn on what's called ambient occlusion. So ambient occlusion is it's much easier to show. Ambient occlusion. It's basically an additional layer on top of your stuff that creates these kind of gradients in all of the crevices, right? That is ambient occlusion. We already saw it in the textures, right? In the so some of our textures had ambient occlusion, but we also have like a global variable which generates ambient occlusion for us. So this is without ambient occlusion, and this is with. Quite a big difference in terms of contrast and in terms of how real things look. So ambient global illumination, ambient occlusion, turn that on. Radius for exterior, write this down. For exterior shots, the radius is 250 millimeters, right? 1/4 of a meter. So I'll just do 250 for me. If you're dealing with meters, it's not going to be 250, it's going to be 0.25, right? Occlusion amount, 0.8, that's great, that's fine. Don't increase it too much. 0.8 is, it works fine. Other than that, everything else seems here seems fine, medium plus, and we just click the render button and it's going to start rendering. So I'll do that. Now we need to wait, and for the rest of this video, actually the next video is going to be all about interior, so I'm not even going to create a camera in this particular video. We're going to do that next in the next video. But for the remainder of this video, I'll show you how to kind of work with a render, with this render while it's still rendering, in terms of something similar to Photoshop work, right? How to do Photoshop work on a render that is still being rendered. But for that, I just needed to kind of at least do a little bit of work beforehand. So I might talk, but I don't have anything to say. So we can just sit here quietly and just wait for it to kind of do its magic. Oh yeah, this is not an interactive render, meaning that when this is rendering out and I kind of rotate the view, it's not going to care. It's not going to update or change in any way, right? That is an important thing. Like what's different between interactive and final render is that when you do a final render, it just renders whatever camera you had. It's rendering that, right? And it doesn't care about anything else. So it's basically the process of rendering is going to be it giving you a very noisy image at first, and then slowly reducing the noise over and over and over, right? Until you finally get a not noisy, clean image. That's how it works. So I think we're kind of okay, and you can kind of see, you know, this version versus this version, right? So it already reduced a little bit of noise here, and it's kind of going through this and then continuing to reduce noise. Once it's done with this area, it's going to come back to this area and reduce the noise even further and kind of give you more and more details as it's doing that. That's how it works. So this is a long process and it's going to take a while. My guess is that for this particular shot, it would be around an hour of rendering, maybe a little bit more with my computer. I have plenty of time. Actually, we're not going to stick here for a while, for an hour. I'm just going to stop the video once I'm finished talking, and I'll show you the results in the next video. But basically, okay, important part. How do you change like brightness, contrast, hue, saturation, and so on this shot while it's still being rendered? Well, this is where it's a little bit problematic because of versions of Vray that you might be using. If you're using version 4, and you know some numbers after the version 4, if you're using version 4, then your menu for editing is going to be located here in the bottom left corner, and you need to click an icon that is at furthest down to bottom left, right? So somewhere here you'll have that icon. Here I have version 5, which basically means that to access that same menu that those of you who have version 4 see, I just need to drag out from the side this menu here. So you'll see like these 3 dots and you drag them out and you get this menu. But from here on out, it kind of works in a similar way, even though the user interface is different. So what can we do here? Well, first of all, let me break it down. So this is going to be just for Vray 5 users. Source RGB is basically how is the image pixels calculated, and we're using RGB. I'll show you what light mix is in the last tutorial. It's a very useful thing for which came with Vray 5, but for now we're just sticking to source RGB. That's fine. Denoiser, we are not using any denoisers because that's I feel like that is an advanced setting, because if you don't know how to use a denoiser, you can create a very shitty image, right? So denoisers, we are not using them for this tutorial. Lens effects. Do I show you lens effects? I'll show you lens effects later. So basically, you know when you kind of take a photo and there's sunlight and it's very bright and you get that like nice aureola effect and everything's like there's a little bit of bloom in there and everything's a little bit softer. Those are like lens effects, and that happens usually because your lens is scratched, right? So in this view, the lens is perfect. It's not scratched. It doesn't have any deformations. So lens effects are turned off. And I think we'll keep it that way. Maybe I'll turn it on as the final pass. But for now, let's ignore lens effects. By the way, for the Vray 4 users, I am trying to remember, but I think the lens effects is going to be, again, in the bottom left corner, it's going to be the last icon that you'll see in the bottom left corner. And it's going to kind of open up a whole menu on the left-hand side of your render box. If I remember correctly, I think it's there. Anyway, if we go here, create a layer, and we create an additional layer. So For Vray 4 users, the layers are already there. You just need to enable them. For Vray 5 users, you need to create them. So if I create, for instance, exposure layer here, like that, it's just going to add one more, like a adjustments layer on top of my existing image, right? So that's exposure. And with exposure layer, what I can do is I, for instance, can reduce exposure or increase exposure, right? You can't go, full ham and increase exposure like that or reduce exposure like that. You will be losing pixel information for sure, but you can kind of find a nice balance. That's what it does, right? Reduces and increases exposure. Let me default this back to 0. Then you have highlight burn. This is basically how does it treat, let's zoom into this area right here. How does it treat things that are overly bright? If I decrease this, you can see that this becomes more dull. But in doing so, I'm reducing pixels that are overly overexposed, that are too white. Let's say it like that. So highlight burn is a nice tool, but in my opinion, it kind of when you decrease highlight burn, you're also decreasing the contrast of the image quite a bit, and you're decreasing the depth of the image. So with the highlight burn, I like to keep it like at half, something like that. Then contrast is basically, yeah, contrast is contrast, right? You can increase contrast, you can decrease contrast, however you want. So usually I like to kind of increase the contrast just a tiny bit, then keep increasing the exposure until I find something that kind of looks like it works. Maybe decrease the highlight burn a bit more, increase the contrast a bit more. Something like that is okay. So see how I'm not, I'm moving these sliders just slightly, right? I can't move them too much because it will mess everything up. So that's my new exposure. It was like this before, like this now, right? Not much of a change, but there is a little bit of change. So now I can kind of go in here and choose a background, for instance, and I can place an image in my background. Let me see how this works. I'll just use this, open. It doesn't really work that well. Okay, so we skip over background. We'll just do that in Photoshop. Whatever. So we don't do anything with the background. White balance is the pretty nice one. So if I turn on the white balance layer and I go through the temperature, I can make this warmer or I can make this colder. Well, that's blue, but I can make this a little bit colder or a little bit warmer, right? Which is nice. So I have the balance there, and I can also, and let's say in this case, I want it a little bit warmer, like so. And then I can also like shift between magenta or green, right? Green colors. So I'll maybe make it warm and slightly shifted towards green. Right? So this is with, this is without, with, without. So it gets that kind of nice greenish effect on it. Not effect, but color saturation on it. We have like hue saturation and color balance. For these, I kind of, we could do color balance. So let's do color balance instead of color saturation. So color balance basically has 3 channels: shadows, mids, highlights. Right, so let's say if shadows, let me do something extreme. Shadows, cyan, mids, green, highlights, blue. Or highlights, I can do red. Right, so now you can see that the highlights that I had, okay, the mids are destroying my scene. Let's keep it civil. so the shadows basically controls the dark pixels of my scene, and I have quite a few. So it has a lot of effect over them. The mids controls the medium intensity pixels of my scene, and highlights controls the bright pixels of my scene right here. So I can, you never go full ham with these sliders, never ever. Instead, what you do, just zero everything out. 0, 0, and 0 that. Instead, you make slight adjustments. So let's say the highlights, I kind of want them to be a little bit warmer, even warmer than they currently are, right? So I'll switch this just slightly towards red and slightly towards yellow, right? For mids, I kind of want to keep them the way they are. And for shadows, I want to add a little bit of blue into the shadows color, right? So let me zoom in here, for instance. So I'll just switch this to blue and see how immediately it changes with just a tiny fraction of the color shift. A little bit of cyan, right? So now this is without. I'm not sure if you'll see. This is without. This is with. Without, with. Yeah, you can see it. Okay, that's good. Without, without, with. Slight adjustments. Subtle adjustments. So basically that, right? Is there anything else? There are things that, like the color lookup table, LUTs, and so on. I could show you those, but those are just first figure out these settings and know how to work with these settings, and then once you're all grown up, then you'll be able to work with LUTs and whatnot. So this is rendering apparently, and it's rendering slowly, but we can already, this is like after pass 1, right? Usually it starts looking good after pass 256. That's the moment where it starts looking good. And then it kind of speeds up and finishes up the render quicker. You know, so with every, let me rephrase. Pass 1 takes the longest, then pass 2 is faster, pass 3 is faster than pass 2, pass 4 is faster than pass 3, and so on. So it keeps increasing in speed because it's smart. It knows which parts are super noisy and which parts are not. So it understands, you know, that, oh, I need to focus up more on this area because this is super noisy, and kind of solves those areas faster. And then parts that are not noisy anymore, such as, okay, everything's noisy still. Yeah, of course, everything is noisy. It's pass 1. But once something is not noisy anymore, it's going to skip it in remaining passes, so it becomes faster over time. But then again, yes, this is going to take maybe even more than an hour to render out. So I will pause, or I will rather stop the video because I don't want to, you know, you to wait with me that long. I'm just thinking if there are any final things that I want to show. Oh yeah, I can show you the freaking lens effects, right? So lens effects. Let's find a bright area. So for instance, this guy right here. And if lens effects are enabled, right? This is my aperture, how it looks like. So like the blades of the camera, how they look like. And here I can kind of mess around with them. So I will not go too deep in this, but basically if I change, for instance, if I ramp up the intensity, notice how this kind of starts blooming. Ramp it up even further, increase the size. There's like this glow here that's happening, and it's a red glow because we are shifting towards red in the highlights. And I can see that the threshold for it, you know, what does it read as a bright object is halved. So it's like half the threshold. So this is going to become freaking neon. So like that bloom effect is kind of nice, but I don't think you need it. Definitely not with this intensity. Maybe just a slight bloom, like intensity of 1 with size of 10. Oh, that's cool. My camera died. Camera gone. A second. Yeah. Boom, boom. Come on. Layer. There we go. Where was I? Right, bloom. So if it's just like size of 10 with intensity of 1 and there's like almost no noticeable bloom, that is more accurate, I think. Yeah, and we care about accuracy in this case. Lens scratches, if you turn those on, see these streaks now that are appearing? Let me amp up the intensity so that you can see better. So these streaks are from the scratches of the lens. If you get these streaks with your iPhones or your cameras, just clean the lens. You probably just kind of, it's not even a scratch, it's just the, how is it called? The oils from your fingers. You touched the screen and you smudged it, and you get those kind of streaks that way. So we can simulate those as well. We can kind of, so maybe. Yeah, I think that's gonna look fine. Maybe even less intensity, just a tiny bit of that streak simulation going on. Yeah, and that's it. I'm not gonna show you anything more about this. This is unnecessary, completely unnecessary. Okay, that's it. We're done. I will continue rendering this, right? And I will show the results of all 3 views in the next video. Yeah, done. Bye.